If you are dreaming of a life in Irish countryside, then this video is for you. What are some tough realities that you need to be okay with if you want to live in more rural Ireland? What practical things do you need to consider before a move? And how will your social life change, especially if you are used to living in the city? In this video, I will provide answers to those questions. Point number one is rural infrastructure. Roads and infrastructure in general is a little bit different in Ireland on the countryside if you compare it to a city. And I find also some surprising things when I compare to other European countries where I've lived on the countryside. In some ways, there is more space in rural Ireland. Vast rolling hills, forests, fields, kilometers of uninterrupted, beautiful coastlines. And in other ways, things get more crammed. Roads get narrower, speed limits get higher, and interestingly, settlements are often packed together, even in smaller towns on the countryside. So you will certainly have those picturesque roads with stone walls on each side that wind beautifully around the hills, the green hills. But while there is beauty to behold in that, those roads, for example, also come with a few dangers. You might encounter narrow roads without any sidewalks, making walking or biking on smaller roads such as regional roads and country roads. It can actually be quite dangerous to walk or in some way move around there without a vehicle. Naturally, on the countryside, there's also more agricultural traffic, vehicles on the road, as well as animals. As soon as I've gone off the city area where we live, it is not uncommon to encounter sheep, for the most part, just really randomly on the road. So you really have to be careful. And on those roads, for example, the speed limit has been 80 kilometers per hour. During storm season, heavy rain, there can often also be significant flooding on roads. Luckily, these aren't necessarily day after day, much of the year sort of inconveniences, but more seasonal occurrences. But the road infrastructure can be a little bit rough out there on the countryside, not the same as in an Irish bigger city. In terms of housing, while there are benefits to getting more space and usually sort of good quality housing, internet can be an issue in some more rural places. And when it comes to the electrical grid, for example, if you live a bit more out there during storm seasons, this can become a problem while living on the countryside. A friend of ours, for example, told me that during one major storm, they were 9 days without electricity before it was fixed. And so it takes longer to get your electricity back on the countryside. If you compare, and this was the first winter that they had lived on the countryside, and compare that to where we've been living, only once we've been without electricity during a storm, and that was just a few hours, and then it was all back up and running. So on the countryside, you certainly have to do a little bit more preparation, not just some candles and flashlights, but actually have some water, have maybe alternative power sources available to you, ways to heat yourself. So these are just things to consider. And I have to say that from what I'm reading, the internet quality on Irish countryside has improved significantly thanks to the fiber rollout, but it is just something to definitely check and make sure you have the needed connectivity, especially if you're someone who is relocating to the countryside to work remotely. So then the internet connectivity becomes even more vital and important. And how about getting places? Let's talk a little bit about car dependency. That'll be our point number 2. Almost everywhere outside of bigger Irish cities, a car is a must. Public transport can be infrequent or even non-existent. Grocery shopping, healthcare, appointments, social activities, those all often require driving. Owning at least one car is usually a must, and for many families it's even necessary to have two, especially if both parents are working. And one thing about this car dependency is also the way the public transport system is built, in that it is very Dublin-centric or big city-centric. So there are a lot of routes from countryside, smaller towns to Dublin or to other cities. There's also a fair bit of routes from some smaller cities to each other, but it is rather difficult to get from a small town into another small town. So what often ends up happening, let's say there's one town by car, they would be about an hour away. But if you want to take public transport, you might have to first go into Dublin or a bigger city, let's say Galway or Cork, and then take a separate route from there to go where you actually wanted to go. And that could then end up taking several hours, and so it is very inconvenient and in reality difficult to rely only on public transport outside of the city networks. Next, I'd like to talk about some aspects that will impact your daily living. First, one of the things that you need to be okay with is limited amenities. Many villages outside of bigger cities in Ireland only have basic services. You may need to travel 30 to 60 minutes for major shopping, healthcare appointments, larger gyms, entertainment like cinemas, international food stores, and even government offices. So if you are used to city convenience and everything being close by, this might feel a little bit restrictive. And while at first this might feel exciting and in some way exotic, you'll be spending your days quite differently to what you would in the city. It might be worth doing a few months of a trial run before you commit for sure to a life outside of the city if you have been a city person. Because while at first it might feel exciting, then the reality, when everything takes so much effort and so much time out of your regular days, it can start bothering you. Another important consideration is healthcare access. While Ireland has excellent medical professionals and that extends beyond the bigger cities, it can be slower and more sparse to get the right kind of professionals when you live in more rural parts of Ireland. So if you have a health condition that requires specialist treatment, it can be more difficult to live on the countryside or require significant effort to go see the doctor or any specialist you might need. In general, there are longer travel times to hospitals. GP offices are a little bit more scattered, so it can be harder to get signed in with a GP, and longer wait times for public healthcare as well. While there are less people wanting the service, then also there's fewer hospitals and staff offering those services, so you never really get to reap the benefits of not living in the city in that sense. Private healthcare can help with this, but it still doesn't fully eliminate the element of travel and effort that it would take to go see those specialists. Now, what about those social life aspects? Let's jump into that in the next few points. First, like in any more rural community, getting integrated does take time. And while the Irish are generally very, very friendly people, it's still not a given that they will just let you in without any hesitation and without sort of first checking what kind of person you really are. So the integration, getting into the community, usually tends to happen more gradually, not instant, not necessarily quickly. You might find that locals have known each other for decades, so the friendships go really deep, that a lot of the social life revolves around clubs and sport-related activities, that much of the social life also happens through schools and in the pubs. So you've maybe met an Irish person, got the sense that they are really friendly, that they like you, but still the development of deep friendships do take time. If you join one of those communities like a sports club, if you have kids that go to school, this can happen more naturally and more quickly for you. But still, you might want to prepare yourself mentally for sort of like a dark period for the first 6 to 12 months of moving to the countryside, where it can be hard to make connections, but slowly, surely, you will find friends, make good connections, but yeah, it just takes time. Point number 6 is that naturally there are less international people living in smaller towns in Ireland, which means that there's less international diversity. If you compare with bigger cities like Cork or Dublin, for example, there's fewer international restaurants and shops, smaller expat communities, fewer cultural events and international schools. Some people enjoy this a lot, and it might even be the reason why they move. You know, they want to get the real Irish experience, get to know Irish people, really integrate. But for some people, they might miss that cultural diversity, meeting people from all around the world and eating a diverse international cuisine. And on the romantic side of things, when it comes to dating, of course, you will be dealing with fewer fish in smaller ponds. So if you are moving to Ireland with the hope of finding an eligible bachelor or bachelorette, if you move to the countryside, your choice will narrow down quite a bit. Not to say that there's nothing good to be found on Irish countryside, but it's just simple maths. There's just less available there, less people, less potential. So if you are hoping to find someone, and if it's really important for you, if you are moving to find love, then you might want to start in a bigger Irish city. Also, in terms of the venues of where it is possible to find a partner, of course, you have a lot of those pubs, you know, local meeting places, but when it comes to nightlife and clubs, you do again have to do a bit of traveling into some of the bigger towns to get into a club, and this is what a lot of young people do in smaller Irish towns. So, thank you for making it this far in the video. I'll share a few more extra points here for you, and those would be that for some it might be really surprising how dark and quiet it gets on the countryside. So if you're a city person moving to the countryside for the first time, this is certainly something to consider. And in Ireland, the winters get dark. I mean dark. And not too long ago, I discovered that Irish roads don't really have very much lighting. So even on the motorway, outside of bigger settlement areas, they don't have lights. And that too just creates this just deep darkness. And so, yeah, just keep that in mind. And also, it's hard to compare town and small city to each other. So depending on where the place you want to live is located, your life can look very different. So if we're talking slightly off Galway or Cork, that life will look very different to if you're moving to Donegal, you know, one of the islands off the Irish coast. So lots of considerations. If you see one place in rural Ireland, it doesn't mean that another place will look and feel exactly the same. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I enjoyed having you here, and I hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.